This is the part 2 of the video where I'm going to analyze Sun Pharmaceutical Industries and compare that with the other group companies, and I'll also mark out which ratios are good and where the ratios have gone bad by marking it in green or red. The current market price is strictly not comparable because some of the scripts may be at a face value of 10, some may be at 5 or 2 or 1 also. So it is not all the prices are not strictly comparable. Let us look at the second one, which is down percentage. How much the price has fallen from its 52-week high. So when we look at the numbers in the group companies, Sunpharma has fallen the highest at 41% from its 52-week high, whereas Dr. Reddy's lab has fallen the least at 12%. So the lower it falls, the better the stock is, because that shows the strength that it has not, or maybe it is showing that the script is at a higher level. So this is what we want. We don't want the script to fall too much, but if the script falls at a steep pace and the ratios are very good, we can in fact buy that particular company. So here Dr. Reddy's lab is the cheapest, has fallen the least, and Sunpharma has fallen the most at 41%. Let us look at the 5 years historical price earning and 3 years historical price earning data. The cheapest available script is Sunpharma for both 3 years, Aurbindo at 3 years price earning and 5 years price earning multiple. So this is the cheapest available at 17 times and 18 times. Aurbindo at the current price is the cheapest one available, and the most expensive looks like Sunpharma itself. It was always trading at a high multiple. Sunpharma was always trading at a very high multiple of 39 times and 42 times, whereas Aurbindo has been trading at the lowest multiple at 17 and 18 times. Let us look at the current price earning data. The most expensive script as of now in terms of earning, when price is compared to the earnings, is Biocon at 42 times, and the cheapest one available as of today is Aurbindo at 14 times. So this is the most reasonable script at current level compared to its earnings. Next we'll look at the price to operating cash flow. The cheapest stock available in terms of cash is Aurbindo again, and the most expensive is Biocon again at 47.9 times. Of course we would not want to buy at this high valuations. We would want it to come down. So in terms of valuations, at least Aurbindo is quite cheap. Let us look at the current market price to the book value. The most expensive, it seems, are Biocon and Torrent Pharma, trading at a very high valuation to its book value of 5.2 times and 5.4 times. I have explained this book value, the net worth, and the OCF as well as the price earning in the previous part 1 video. So if you would want to understand that, I would suggest you watch that video first. The cheapest script in terms of book value, where the price is compared to its book value, seems to be Sunpharma and Cipla both, as well as Aurbindo. So these are all at a cheaper rate, available at a reasonable rate, below 2.5 times. Aurbindo is still at 2.6 times and Cipla at 2.9 times, so it's much higher. Only Sunpharma is below 2.5 times. Let us look at the PEG ratios. PEG ratio has to be positive for both 5 years and for 3 years, where only I can see the best available is Aurbindo at below 1.5 times, and Torrent pharma is still very expensive at 5 times PEG of 5 years, and most of them had a degrowth in profit for 5 years and 3 years. So most of the PEGs are showing negative. So all of these are negative in terms of PEG. Next, we'll look at the profit growth rate. Most of the company's profits have declined from 5 years back, from where the profit was 5 years back. So we can see all of these companies have declined in their profit from 5 years back. The highest in the group was Dr. Reddys lab at 10%. That is, from 5 years back it has been declining. The profit is declining at the rate of 10%. Whereas the highest growth rate is in Aurbindo at 52%, which is extraordinarily high. So we'll need to understand why the profit is growing at such a high rate. Let us look at the last 3 years profit growth rate. Again, the highest decline in the profit growth is of Dr. Reddys lab again, and even Sunpharma has declined at a very high rate, double-digit rate of 14%. And the highest growth rate in profit is again Aurbindo at 15%. The rest I'm not considering because those are in single digits. Biocon is again at a slightly higher single digit, but we'll ignore that for time being. Let us look at the sales growth. In the last 5 years, most of the companies have grown their sales, and the highest growth rate that I see is of Sunpharma and Aurbindo at 18% and 23%. So these are good growth rates for the 5 years. But in the last 3 years, the highest growth rate again is in Aurbindo at 10.8 times, Cipla again at 10%, and Biocon also at 10%. So these are good growth rates for these 3 companies in the last 3 years. And the degrowth for both these companies, Dr. Reddys and Sunpharma, had a mild degrowth of around 1.1%. So these are negatives. Let us look at the return ratios, return on equity and return on capital employed. The highest return was by Aurbindo as well as Torrent pharma on its equity, which was at 25%, and the lowest was by Biocon and Cipla at 11 and 12%. Generally, ROE and ROCE should be above 15%. And for return on equity, the highest was again Aurbindo and Torrent pharma at 29% and 31%. These are positive. And the lowest is 10% for Biocon and Cipla. So these are negatives. Next, look at the profit earned by the companies in the last 5 years. This is not strictly comparable. This profit, total profit earned during the year, will vary according to the size of the company. So we'll ignore this particular line and move on to the cash flow. Now what we need to understand between these two is, although we cannot consider or understand how the companies have done in terms of its profit, what we can do is we can compare this particular profit of last 5 years with the cash flow from operations of the last 5 years, and then try to understand how the company has done, which company has done the best in terms of the cash earnings. Sunpharma 24,398 CR was the profit, whereas it earned 27,250 CR, which is a good comparison. Cipla 6,100 against 8,300, 8,400 against 11,700 for Dr. Reddys. Aurbindo has received less cash than what it earned as profit after tax. So only Aurbindo has received less cash against its profit or its earnings. So this is a negative for Aurbindo, and it seems the highest earned by a company for its cash seems to be Torrent Pharma and Dr. Reddy's, where it has earned a good cash. So we'll give it a positive color. Let us also understand the free cash flow. So this will have to be compared again with the cash flow from operations. The free cash flow from operations should not be less than 50% of the cash flow. So here this is okay. This is also okay. This seems to be lower, just 5,700. So the double would be 10,000, 11,400. So which is less than 50%, which is not a good sign. Then Aurbindo at 2,900 is way too less. Biocon has this is the worst one, and I would say Aurbindo is also having a very less free cash flow compared to its cash flow from operations. So I would give them negative marks. Biocon is of course negative cash flow, so we cannot invest in these kind of companies where the free cash flow is negative. The positive I would say is Sunpharma and Dr. Reddy's lab. So these two have done well in terms of its free cash flow. It's not way too less than its cash flow from operations. Next we'll look at the average PAT to the PAT and then the cash flow. Again, this line is strictly not comparable, so we'll have to compare it with the PAT of the current year. So we want the profit after tax to be more than the average, which shows that the company is doing well from its average profit that it has earned. Here for Sunpharma it's a negative because the profit has declined, has gone down even below its average profit of the last 5 years. Cipla has just managed to cross above its average profit. Dr. Reddy's lab has fallen by 50% below its average. Aurbindo has managed to rise above its average profit of 1,900 CR. Biocon has fallen below its average, and Torrent Pharma has also fallen below the average. So whichever profits have fallen below the average are negative. All of them have fallen below the negative. Only Aurbindo and Cipla have managed to go above their average, which is a good sign. Let us look at the cash flow. So this has to be compared with the profit after tax. So we can see it has earned cash better than what it earned as earnings. So this is positive. This is also positive. Cipla has also managed to earn more cash than its earnings. Dr. Reddy's lab has earned even better cash than what it has earned as profit after tax on an average basis. Aurbindo also has earned good cash flow from operations compared to its profit after tax, even though it is slightly less than its profit after tax. So I would give this as a negative. Biocon has earned double of what it has earned as profit in terms of cash, and Torrent Pharma has also earned better cash. So these numbers I would give them positive. And Aurbindo and Cipla, in fact only Aurbindo has earned less cash than its earnings, profit after tax. Let us move on to the quarterly sales growth rate. Both Biocon and Aurbindo have grown their sales at the rate of 30%, which is positive, and the least two stocks which have had the least degrowth rate or the least growth rate in sales are Sunpharma and Torrent Pharma. So I would give them a negative. Although this is also good, 8.6% is still considered good, but in terms of comparison, this is the least growth rate in the group companies. Let us look at the profit growth rate. Only Sunpharma and Torrent Pharma had a degrowth in profit in the YOY quarter period of 52% for Sunpharma and 37% for Torrent Pharma. So these are not a good sign. Whereas the highest profit earned was by Dr. Reddy's lab and Biocon at 67 and 63% respectively. Let us look at the net worth. The biggest company in the group was Sunpharma, and after Sunpharma it works out to be Cipla at 15,000 CR. So these are very big companies, and the smallest company of the group seems to be Biocon and Torrent Pharma at 6,000 and 4,700 CR. So, although it's not a negative, but these are small cap companies. Let us look at the contingent liability. The contingent liability should not be more than 20%. If it's more than 20%, that's a sign of weakness. So let us see which company has managed to cross 20% of its net worth in terms of contingent liability. Most companies have managed to keep their contingent liability below 20%, so that's a good sign. Let us look at the debt to equity. The worst case scenario is of Torrent Pharma, which has a debt of around 1 times of its equity portion, and the second highest is Aurbindo at 0.49. Although when we strictly see it, the interest coverage is very good for Aurbindo at 20 years, whereas Torrent Pharma is just 2 years for a debt of 1 times. So although this will still be considered a positive, but because we have to give 2 scripts positive and 2 scripts negative, Aurbindo comes at a higher debt to equity ratio, whereas the least available is Sunpharma and Dr. Reddy's lab at 0.24 times each, and they also have a good coverage of 26 and 10 times, but in terms of coverage I would say Dr. Reddy's lab has done much better, and even Aurbindo is doing good that it has a coverage of 20 years. The least coverage is of Torrent Pharma and Sunpharma at 2 years and 10 years for Sunpharma. So this is not a good sign. We should have as high coverage as possible that we can get from its net profit. Let us look at the promoter holding. The highest promoter holding is in Torrent Pharma, then Sunpharma at Biocon and Torrent Pharma at 60% and 71% respectively. The higher the promoter holding, the better it is, and the lower the pledge, the better it is. So both Aurbindo and Sunpharma have pledged their shares. Although it is less than 20% of the promoter holding, it will still be a negative, and all 4 other companies don't have any pledge, so they are all positives. Let us look at the debtors to sales ratio. The lower the debtors to sales percentage, the better it is. So in terms of debtors to sales, the Aurbindo and Torrent Pharma have done the best, and the Sunpharma and Dr. Reddy's lab have done the worst in terms of how much money is still to be collected from the debtors or from the customers when it is compared to current year's sales. Finally, let us look at the 3 more ratios, which is debtor days. The higher the number, the weaker the value is, and the lower the number, the better it is. When the numbers are lower, collection days are lower, it means the company is collecting money faster. Aurbindo is collecting payment from its customers only in 68 days or within 68 days, and Torrent Pharma within, I would say, Aurbindo and Cipla in 74 days. These two are good numbers, which is below 90 days. And Sunpharma and Dr. Reddy's lab are taking 107 and 103 days to collect money from its customers, which is not a good sign. Let us look at which company has earned the highest or managing to earn the highest net profit margin. Aurbindo and Torrent Pharma have managed to earn double-digit net profit margin of 14% for Aurbindo and 11% for Torrent Pharma. And the least profit margin is of Dr. Reddy's lab and Sunpharma. Dr. Reddy's lab's net profit margin is 6.6% and Sunpharma's is 8.1%, and they are below 10% as well. So that's not a good sign. We want a good net profit margin for the company. Finally, looking at the dividend yield, the highest dividend paid by any of the group company is Torrent Pharma and then Cipla at 0.55 times. In fact, Dr. Reddy's lab is paying 0.77% and Torrent Pharma is paying 0.92%. So these are good signs. And the lowest dividend paid is by Biocon and Aurbindo at 0.19 and 0.4 respectively. Although it's not a negative, but this is the lowest that the peer group company has paid. Thanks for watching this video. In conclusion, I would just like to say that most of the positive marks received is to the Sunpharma, is to Aurbindo pharma, and the negatives that I see is Biocon is of course negative. Aurbindo looks the best in the group company. Even Cipla looks good in terms of ratios, and the Dr. Reddy's lab looks a little expensive. So overall I would say that Aurbindo is the best, and we need to wait for the other company's price to fall before we can invest in the company. Thank you for watching this video.